Chapter 19.
The necessity to hope. Kai awoke to a surrounding dimly lit hut that still smelled of broth. After being dragged back from the morning thing, he was pushed back into his cage in the corner of the longhouse area of Ragnbjorg's hut, and quickly fell asleep, exhausted and hungry. Awakening 4 hours later, under a grey sky in the early evening, an overwhelming and captivating feeling of melancholy possessed him. Everything in his life was, to him, at its end. His will to fight was diminished by the mere fact that, despite moving through the path set before him, had to this point reaped no return. He had no hope. The only thing he had left, and that was beginning to dwindle with his will to fight, was the outward manifestation of his pride that concealed this burden of brokenness. Whatever an ordeal is in the Traus tribe, it's probably rigged like the path, he began to murmur. But another thought crossed his mind with such a heavy conviction, either because of the values instilled in him at a young age or because of the resilient mind Odin gifted him with. It was a clear thought, and it wasn't a thought born from some random whim. It was a thought that was founded and supported by the very moral laws of the universe, governed by the lawgiver. That is, it was simply the proper, correct, and right way to think, given his present situation. It was the necessity to hope. This necessity to hope was not born from utility reasons or even for the sake of practical survival. It was hope born simply because hoping was the right thing to do. Ever since Kai was a child, he carried with him this unrelenting optimism, even in the face of severe suffering. It wasn't that he didn't have moments of despair, depression, or feeling completely overwhelmed. It was that, in these moments, he simply knew from the Creator himself that the only morally correct path forward was hope. The only way out was through. And if he never got out, it was in the mere attempts to get through that made going to the grave more than simply bearable. It made going to the grave right. Holding on to this thought of hope, he then felt a presence behind him, and turning his head, found those two small blue eyes, yet again staring back at him. "Here," the young boy with the Yggdrasil necklace said quietly under his breath. "Have some dried fish." Without giving a second thought, Kai coldly responded, "I do not take scraps from Traus dogs." "Then you will starve, and the gods will laugh," the boy responded with a smirk. For the first time since he left home, Kai felt a surge of laughter spring inside him. This comedic and yet ironically true statement said by the boy, coupled with the necessity to hope he had just felt, allowed him to fully step into acting in a manner that would serve his interest, and not step into self-interest merely for the sake of self-interest, but for the sake of fulfilling what could only be one thing: the divine will. Reaching out his hand, he picked up the fish and ate. Suddenly, relief and pleasure filled his taste buds and stomach. Just then, the mother who had been cooking the broth earlier that morning walked in and firmly but calmly scolded her son. "Ingvar, you must let him eat when he is ready," she said. Nervous that he had overstepped his bounds, Ingvar moved closer to the fireplace and began playing with his wooden figurines. Looking into a face with bright green eyes and crow's feet that, like his mother, had formed at their ends, Kai observed the boy's mom, who, coming closer to the cage, addressed him directly. "You are young, too young for this war. You should be at home, not bound in a cage." Defiantly, Kai spat back with instinct. "A Langer boy is no different from a man. We fight as soon as we can lift a sword. That is our way." With a slight chuckle, followed by both a look of sadness and a tone of seriousness, the woman responded, "A wise man once said, 'Those who live by the sword Die by the sword. Kai thought, but gave no reply. The gods of men demand blood, she continued, but perhaps there is a greater god, one who asks not for blood, but gives his own, and gives his blood not entirely for himself. Bitter, Kai responded, if such a god exists, I have not seen him, and if a god did give his own blood, it could only be foremost for glory and exaltation in Valhalla. A few seconds of silence ensued. Then, getting up, the mother walked slowly out of the main room, whispered in her son's ear, "Do not stay up late," and went to bed. Sitting in the silence of a child, wrapped up in his figurine games and the crackling of fire, Kai recalled what the mother had said. Those who live by the sword die by the sword, he thought. But surely there is no other way to live, his mind continued. And surely those who don't live by the sword will sooner or later die by it too. Confused, Kai felt the insides of his being heat up. Thinking more about this conversation he had just finished began to exhaust him. It was as if some troll had taken an axe to his brain, or the gods were at war above his head. This woman is a fool, he taunted quietly. Looking over his shoulder, he found that Ingvar had fallen asleep with the Yggdrasil necklace glinting around his neck in the firelight. Thoughts of home and of Tora flooded his mind. Something in his heart told him that Tora could still be his Valkyrie into Valhalla. But the path to Valhalla, imperfect as it was, still required one thing from him: Viking.